I feel like I printed off a lot of stuff.
Just a few notes, just a note or two.
Just a few notes, folks. Fisk University is doing something that they've never done before. Their gymnastics team will host a meet next year featuring 5 universities, all coached by Black women. First off, just think of how incredible that is, okay? We're talking about Fisk University, a historically Black college here in Nashville that now has a gymnastics team as of last year. And so all of this happened in a very short amount of time. Their gymnastics team is now going to host universities from across the country. Brown University, Iowa State University, Rutgers University, Talladega University, and William and Mary University. They're all headed to Nashville for this competition. Coach Corinne Tarver said that she called some of these schools to see who would be interested in taking part, and there was no hesitation. People were happy to be a part of history, because that's what this is.
Fisk had an amazing year last year and showed HBCUs how basically Black Girl Magic can work.
That one event could have the potential to just have a ripple effect that a lot of other institutions that may have thought about it, now I think they'll think about it a little bit more.
Fisk University is doing this for the very first time. Talladega University is only the second HBCU to have a gymnastics team. And so you've got the first and the second, all competing in a gymnastics meet with some of the top competition around the country. If you've ever played sports, you know that the actual competition is probably only a fraction of why people do this. I mean, it may be half. Okay? The other half is stuff like this. People understand the gravity of the moment. This was an opportunity that was not presented to these students before last year. It's not like gymnastics didn't exist. It's just these teams. Some of these teams didn't exist. And so for them to have an opportunity to compete at this level, at the Division I level, against Division I competition, I mean, I can only imagine what some of these students are thinking. I can tell you, when I heard about a gymnastics team at an HBCU, eyebrows raised. I didn't know that we didn't have gymnastics teams at some of these colleges. So when I heard that it was coming to Fisk University right here in our backyard, I thought, that's great. And then we started seeing things like, you know, Tennessee State University, TSU, coming up with a hockey team, which I believe would be the only Division I hockey program in the state, in Tennessee, and it's at TSU. Not Vanderbilt, not Tennessee, here. It's happening at an HBCU. It's gonna be interesting to see, you know, where they're gonna play and some of the logistics behind all of that. But HBCUs are taking part in not so historically Black sports. And I think that's pretty cool.
I mean, you look at the role models that have come out of gymnastics lately. I mean, Simone Biles.
I think we almost take it for granted. You know, when we see a Simone Biles, you know, when we see some of these Jerome McGinley's, you know, like these are athletes that paved the way for other Black athletes to play in these sports. They're such high profile talent, right? Like we know that these names, but we don't know how many other people are trying to get to that same point. And maybe it starts at Fisk University. Maybe it starts at TSU. You don't know. At least now they have that opportunity.
What gymnastics event do you think is the most impressive?
Which gymnastics event?
I mean, they're all incredibly hard, incredibly impossible.
Have you ever seen the uneven bars when they do their thing? And then some of the moves where they kind of like bounce their stomach off of the bar and then they just kind of ricochet into the next bar and then come back around. I don't know how you find out that you can do that to begin with, but the talent, the athleticism that it takes to compete at that level, I don't know. But they have role models out there and they've seen them do it. What was the other name? Gabby Douglas, is that what it is? Gabby Douglas? She was part of the dream team, if you will, you know, of the Olympics gymnastics team that I remember, you know, in recent memory. It's weird because I think we almost expect there to be a person of color on some of these Olympic teams, right? Like we see it quite frequently. I think that we have talented people out there who want to rise to the occasion, but may not have the opportunities here or there. Not to take anything away from, you know, Gabby Douglas and, you know, Simone Biles, not to take anything away from those athletes. They are amazing in their own right. I just think that there's more than two out there. That's all I'm saying. Where did Congressman Andy Ogles find $320,000 to loan to his campaign? That's the question. NewsChannel 5's Phil Williams has been looking into some of the campaign finances for Congressman Ogles. The thing about the money that Representative Ogles loaned himself is that we're not quite sure where this money came from. With all of these lawmakers, they have to disclose, their financial statements. So there's no issues later on down the road about what money is being spent and if it's coming from campaign dollars. Now, when Phil looked at the finances for Representative Ogles, he noticed that he didn't have a checking account or a savings account.
Is there any way to tell where this money came from?
Currently, no. So it definitely begs the question of, is there something that's just missing from the financial disclosure report? Is there something that we'll see later? Maybe he just forgot to include it.
As far as finances go, Representative Ogles has an investment property and 3 retirement accounts that he shares with his wife. Back when Ogles announced that he was running for office, he made this big push and this big advertising claim to say that he had raised more than $453,000. So the thing is, he actually only reported about $254,000. I keep looking down here. I'm going to bring this up. Okay. In the end, he loaned his campaign $320,000. Looking through the finances, we couldn't figure out where that money was coming from for a former Maury County mayor who, from all intents and purposes, didn't really look like he had this kind of money just laying around. Phil later found out that Representative Ogles had a $700,000 line of credit taken out and listed his in-laws on that note. Again, you're supposed to let the FEC know about where you're getting your money. Well, this $700,000 was nowhere to be found on any of those reports. So a lot of questions for Representative Ogles. This is obviously on the minds of a lot of people. When we're talking about campaign finances for lawmakers, obviously we just saw what happened with Representative George Santos out of New York, who was expelled from Congress. And the FEC says, I keep going back to my notes because they're so convenient, they said that he had loaned his committee significant sums of money when he, quote, had not made the reported loans and in fact did not have the funds necessary to make such loans at the time. Sounds vaguely familiar. The indictment also said that Santos did this for the purpose of making the campaign appear more financially sound than it is. Phil reached out to Ogles for a comment. Ogles did not respond. You can find this story and a number of other stories from Phil about Representative Ogles just by going to newschannel5.com. A 91-year-old woman was just told by her landlords that they would not be renewing her lease that ends right after Christmas. Frances Eisenbach has been through an ordeal for the last few days here. She went from being told that she would have to move out to hearing from people just like yourself who want to help, to the point where they donated more than $15,000 just to help her land on her feet. I'm picturing my mom. I think a lot of people were picturing their parents, their grandparents.
At the Saddlebrook Apartments in Murfreesboro, 91-year-old Frances Eisenbach was told before Thanksgiving to vacate her apartment after Christmas.
I was scared to death. I'm not able hardly to walk through the house, let alone pack up and move.
She's been here a decade, and her rent is under $1,000 a month.
They were very curt with me when I called. And she said, you have to be out by the 29th.
Her grandson helped her look online, and now units in the same complex are going for roughly $400 more a month.
They want me out of here so they can make more money.
If they plan to redevelop Frances's unit, a new state law says they must give her a 60-day notice to vacate it. We called the office for information, and they had no comment. So far, she says she's called more than 30 places trying to find an affordable place to move. On a fixed income, it's been challenging.
There's just nothing to be found.
So I think that resonated with a lot of people. They know that it's becoming harder and harder to afford rent. I mean, just go back to when, the height of the pandemic, okay? A lot of people were having trouble just making their rent. They had either lost their jobs or hours had slowed or something like that. And so they tried to get some sort of rental assistance, or, we had some rent freezes going on. Well, now that we're out of that, you have people like Ms. Eisenbach who you know, they're kind of falling through the cracks. They don't have some of those resources that people may have offered before during the pandemic. And so what do? Well, turns out you reach out to Alexandra Cohen because not only did this story go, you know, spread like wildfire, but people started donating to the GoFundMe page that was set up for Ms. Eisenbach. And, you know, at this point, I checked, it's at $15,000. Yeah, the first goal was $5,000. They've tripled that. That's amazing.
How long have you been in Nashville?
Almost 4 years.
How much has your rent increased from when you started living in Nashville? I know you've moved.
Yeah.
But still, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of rent increases.
And you know the thing about rent increases? No one ever gives you an explanation as to why the rent is increasing. Have you heard one? Usually it's just know that, you know, costs are going up for me as the landlord. So I've got to pass those costs on to you. That's the explanation that I get. If there ever is an explanation.
I've been here 5 years.
Okay.
Has not been a single year my rent has not increased. It is now 50% more expensive than when I started.
50?
Yeah. Same place, haven't moved. Same place, South Nashville.
It's 50% more.
It was about $1,000 when I moved.
Yeah.
It's now $1,450.
Nah, man. People keep telling me about this Nashville that existed before the pandemic, before I got here, and how things were relatively, you know, inexpensive, or you can make things work. Where is this place? You know, like, I don't know. I'm seeing people, you know, talk about a bargain for rent, and I asked them, oh, what's it looking like for a 1-bedroom? They said, oh, it's cool. It's like $1,800. You know? I said, where? The governor's mansion? Where are you living, people? But no, that's the reality of it right now. If you're moving to Nashville, people are expecting to pay at least $1,700, $1,800, $1,900 for a 1-bedroom apartment anywhere near the city. You know, like, you could be at least 10 minutes away and still pay that much. I've been in the news business for almost 11 years now, okay? My first market, when I moved to Mason City, Iowa, I was paying $600 a month for rent. And at that point, I thought, well, you know, rent's getting up there. And then I moved from place to place to place. I think the highest I ever paid for rent was embarrassingly high. They're gonna say, Levi, why don't you say it? It was $2,100 in Houston. It's up there. We're not there anymore. Anyway, we're hearing about stories like Miss Eisenbach, but I wonder how many other people got this notice? Probably quite a few. And if that's the case, I mean, there are a lot of people out there who might need some help. As much as I appreciate the folks who are, you know, donating to this cause, I mean, it's great. But I also think that we need to put some pressure on figuring out more answers behind why this is happening. So it feels like we're gonna be talking about this for quite some time. I feel like the school voucher situation in Tennessee needs like an entire multi-part series, but for the sake of brevity, we're gonna focus on some of the lawmakers who are now, I'll just say changing sides. They're changing sides. They went from not agreeing with the idea of school vouchers in their county to maybe it's not such a bad idea. So NewsChannel 5's Emily West did a story where she found out that back in 2019, Senator Jack Johnson said, you know, something to the effect of, we will not have taxpayer dollars go toward paying for private schools in Williamson County. Now he's saying, well, I wasn't exactly talking about school vouchers, right? I was talking more about, let me make sure. He said he only meant education savings accounts, commonly known as vouchers. Well, now he's hearing the plan from Governor Bill Lee, and that plan would be Education Freedom Scholarship Act. Very patriotic, you know? How can you be against freedom? Freedom scholarships. This is a thing. It essentially offers an allowance for each student to get about $7,000 so that they can go to these private schools. The plan initially would be that low-income families from all the counties in Tennessee would have access to this money, all right? But then the plan for the second year, we found out, was to make this money accessible to all families in the entire state, including those who can already afford to send their children to private school. Here's how it's worded in the bill. Funding would be provided for a minimum of 10,000 scholarships, increasing over time until all Tennessee students who desire a scholarship are awarded one. That's everybody. Now, of course, some private schools are more expensive than the others, but we've now heard from lawmakers, we've heard from school superintendents who all say the same thing, that this is essentially taking money out of public schools and offering it to private schools. It's not like they're going to these schools, these public schools, and taking money out and taking it to these private institutions. Lawmakers are saying, well, we're not really doing it that way. We are not touching the money that's already allocated for public education. We're tapping into some of these reserve funds that we have. But one would say the reserve funds could be used for anything, right? Like other priorities around Tennessee, including public education. And so if you're tapping into that, you could be tapping into this. Bottom line is we're looking at an education system that people say would essentially defund public schools.
It's even more challenging for kids in rural areas who may not have a private school in their county.
Yeah, the rural communities, some of them may not have a private school. So if we're talking about rerouting money so that, students have access to private education, well, where? I guess is the question. Where are these kids gonna go? I think that was the other argument, is that if we take people out of public schools and now they have access to go elsewhere, well, now, because of the way that our funding is structured, some of these schools may not get as much money because there are not as many students. Can I say problem? I'll say problem. That sounds like a problem. I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about. Senator Johnson also said that he believes this plan will evolve over time, right? Governor Lee's plan will evolve over time before we ever have a chance to vote on this. By we, I mean lawmakers. But I want to know what you think, okay? Let me know what you think about this school voucher structure here in Tennessee. Let me know if you're experiencing the same thing in your states. My best school memory?
Best school.
I was homecoming king in high school.
That's the least shocking thing I've heard today.
Anyway, the parents of some of the victims of the Covenant School shooting will now have an opportunity to present their case in court. These parents, some of them at least, have said that they don't want the Covenant School shooters' writings released to the public. Some of the writings, from what we understand, have a lot of language in there that could be very, upsetting for some of these families. But they also mentioned that, there's some pretty specific instructions about how the shooter carried out this attack. The families have said this is information that could perhaps put other families, other schools, other children at risk. Now, we know that a number of people have filed lawsuits.
But as we know, some aren't willing to wait. Last month, 3 pages of the so-called manifesto were leaked to a conservative talk show host. Legal analyst Nick Leonardo says with so much pressure and people with access, it was only a matter of time.
I'm surprised that this leak didn't occur sooner.
And then there's this. The talk show host who revealed the journal pages claims there was no exchange of money, but if somehow it is found that those pages were sold, that almost certainly would be a felony. A Covenant parent certainly expects charges for whoever was responsible for the leak.
Metro has assured me that this is a felony, that the person who did this will be brought to justice, they will be arrested, and that absolutely has to happen.
When we talked to Metro Police, they said, again, this is a fraction of some of the documents that we found from the Covenant School shooter's home. They walked out with boxes of documents, boxes of information. They said it wouldn't be fair to draw conclusions off of these 3 images. But clearly, since many of us hadn't seen anything, I guess I understand why people were quick to make judgments off of whatever they could find. Even though we've seen some of these writings, there's still a long way to go in court. All of these documents are still tied up in the court process. And I know a lot of people want to know more about what happened. They want to know more about the shooter. They want to know more about how we keep this stuff from happening again. I understand that, but it seems like we're still very early in the process. People forget, the shooting happened in late March, all right? So this is still very much fresh in the minds of the parents who lost people, some of the families who lost loved ones in all of this. They have to relive all of this every time it's brought up, And so as much as I can appreciate people wanting transparency, you know, they want to know what they don't know. As much as I appreciate that, I think that not enough attention has been placed on the parents, just like you said, you know, the loved ones and what they want. Even the family of the shooter have said, we don't want this out there. A lot of people have filed lawsuits asking for this information. They may have to wait. So here's the thing, just like, follow, share this with all your friends. If you need more information on some of these stories, just click the link below. You think I'm gonna say y'all?
Oh yeah, we're gonna make it happen.
So, hey y'all, just.
I want that to be the end of the video.
We'll see you next time.